distro hoppers, lend me your ears. Unite! Assemble! Hi, welcome to Jeremy's Tech Channel. And today, I want to talk to all of the distro hoppers out there. So I had a comment on one of my videos recently, and it really started to spin some things in my mind. Why we choose the distributions that we do and why we move around from distribution to distribution. This person commented had, a different experience than I did with a certain distribution. In fact, it's a distribution that I'm using every day, Endeavour OS. I love it. It works great for me. It feels stable. Everything works right out of the box for me. And so for me, I think it's great. This person had a different experience. Things like their wireless didn't work like they expected it to, for example. So they moved in a very different direction. And on top of that, I've noticed in myself as well that I want to see what all there is to offer. Why do we land on the distributions that we do? In fact, why do we even move from distribution to distribution in the first place? I've been thinking about this, and I've got some theories, if you will. When you leave a proprietary operating system like Windows or Mac, you are kind of like an adventurer in a sense. You are already taking a step and adventuring out, seeing what the world has to offer as far as operating systems. You see Linux, you see BSD, you see these things, and you're like, are these things for me? I want to see what all it has to offer. So you want to check out Debian distributions, then you hear about Ubuntu distributions, and then you hear about Slackware, and then you hear about Gentoo, and then you hear about Arch Linux, and you hear about Red Hat and CentOS and Fedora and all of these things, and OpenSUSE, and the list goes on and on. You're like, well, does that work for me? What makes that one different than the next one? Captain Obvious here. At the core, they're generally the same. There's a Linux core, there's GNU framework there with many of them, not all of them. And then you have the package manager and the software offered and the desktop environments. And to me, it's almost like a chemistry situation that different things are baked together. This Linux kernel with this package manager with this desktop environment, combined with the developers deciding who the user is going to be with this distribution, you get this little chemistry piece on one part, and then you become a part of the equation. You have things that you're wanting to achieve. You have your hardware that you're wanting to get to work, and you have your goals that you want to achieve by using these operating systems. So all of those come together, and sometimes things don't mix right. Maybe it's your hardware. Maybe it is your wireless card. Maybe you have another goal or ideal with what you're wanting to achieve with Linux. I think some easy examples to describe what I'm talking about. Garuda Linux is an Arch-based Linux distribution that is designed for performance for gamers. I mean, it's right there for you. Another distribution, Pop! OS, really has itself set as something that they use specific for their own hardware, and hopefully to get beginner users and new Linux users a grasp and a handle on how to use Linux. Well, I've already gotten my feet wet in Linux, and I've already moved through and learned some things. You may not feel as comfortable on a beginner system because you just want to get right in the terminal and you want to get working right away. Maybe you want to compile every piece of software or application that you're going to put on your system. So Gentoo's for you. Great. That's wonderful. I've heard it said, when we're distro hopping, it's like you have to figure out what all the options are for you. What's actually going to work the best for me? And the only way to get that experience is to distro hop, to go through and find those things, to change distributions. Now, I've used virtual machines for most of that. That can't really be a true case scenario because it's not actually on my hardware. It's not actually on this Dell G15 laptop. The reason I distro hopped for a bit on my actual laptop is I was having an issue and I didn't know where the problem actually was. I thought at the time it was something to do with the sound situation, that it was Pipewire or Pulse Audio, and it was how the distribution was set up to handle and route audio. Well, it turns out it was not. the distribution. It was not Pipewire or Pulse Audio. It was the actual software itself, a proprietary software, DaVinci Resolve. It didn't like AAC. That's fine. I figured out a workaround. I'm able to quickly and easy use a script that allows me to put the video in, changes that AAC through FFmpeg, and it spits it out with something that DaVinci Resolve can use, and I move on with my day. But I went to multiple distributions trying to figure out one that worked for me. And I think we all have some sort of experience that makes us want to distro hop. Maybe it's something simple that you could figure out, opening up a text editor and editing a little piece of the code, or maybe in a simple update or using a different program. But we're like, well, I've wanted to check out Debian Stable, so maybe I'll just go ahead and do that. I've also wanted to check out the GNOME desktop environment. So yeah, I'll do that. So we go through and we change, and then we realize, wait a second, now I've got this different issue that I didn't have before. And you go through and you keep hopping. Surely one of these is going to give me no issues. I feel with my current daily driver, as we say, Endeavour OS, I have had little to no problems. And in fact, the problems that I've had have been my own fault, or piece of software that needs to be dealt with in the software. It had nothing to do with the operating system itself. But I'm sure there's going to be something that pops up. And am I going to choose to work through with it, or am I going to choose to just toss it away? I want to take a look at this real quick. You've probably seen this if you've been researching Linux for any amount of time. This is updated through 2021, and this is all the distributions that are out there and where they came from. You've got Slackware here with all of these distributions. You've got Debian here with all of these distributions. And you've got Ubuntu right here, which is based on Debian, and it's got a whole bunch of spins there. You have Red Hat and SUSE and some that I've never heard of, and it just keeps going. I think it would be very difficult to go through every one of those to decide which one works for you. What I want to encourage myself and you to do when we're deciding on a Linux distribution is, one, spend the time working on it. And obviously there's the exploration, adventurous side of it. I know it's like, adventurous in front of a computer? That sounds great. Sign me up. But we have so much to work through and learn and grow with if you're a new Linux user like myself. So it's totally okay. Release yourself. It's okay to try OpenSUSE and then try Red Hat and then try an Ubuntu base and a Debian base, and to blow up your system trying to use Arch from scratch. All of those things is great. Take the time to explore. That is great. But what you need to realize is what makes them similar, what makes them different, what works for your workflow, and then make a choice. Make a choice. You don't have to be locked down. It's your choice. But I've decided to stick with Endeavour, which is an Arch-based Linux distribution, and I'm going to stick with it for a while. And if I change my mind, that's okay too. But I'm not just going to let a problem be the reason that I distro hop. I'm not going to let curiosity just make me want to distro hop. I've got virtual machines. I can check something out. I checked out yesterday LXQT, which is a desktop environment on Ubuntu, and I really liked LXQT because it had KDE applications and elements, but a much lighter weight and straightforward and simple desktop environment. And I liked it. I'm going, maybe I should switch. But you know what? On an Arch-based system, I can add that desktop environment, change my desktop environment, and keep it and move on. And I don't have to move my files and move all of these pieces that are important to me and do all the setup process. Ain't nobody got time for that. Maybe you do. I don't. I just wanted to encourage you to enjoy the ride, but also take the steps to learn and see what you're actually trying to achieve. Be honest with yourself. What are you trying to achieve by doing this Linux thing? I'm hoping to have years and years of enjoyment and simplicity and open sourceness and all of those things that appeal to me. I like that if I get bored with my desktop, I can change it. If I don't want to use LibreOffice anymore, I can change it. If I'm having issues with the kernel, I can update it or roll it back. If I'm having these issues, I'm going to try to stick within this for a while. Things to look out for when you're choosing a distribution, as you're distro hopping, as you're going through this. Is there a strong community? Is there a strong group of people that are using this and giving you pointers and things to glean from as you're reading through the forums? Ubuntu has a very, very large community. So when you're dealing with an issue, there's a good chance someone else has too, and you can search and find it and find the answers. Arch Linux has a very avid, well-versed community, and they let you know a lot of things that are going on. Even within the Arch user repository database, you can go through, you choose a package, and people are commenting on it, and they are helping each other out. So it's great. Make sure you choose something that has a community. Another thing that you need to look for in a distribution is, how new is your hardware and what kernel do you actually need to use? Do you need the latest and greatest kernel? Long-term support situations are great for people on some older hardware. Not only does it make things more stable, but you don't need the latest kernel to be able to support the newest Gen 6 Wi-Fi card. You don't need it. So maybe looking at something like that. Also, be real with what you're trying to achieve. Some people like getting under the hood. If you're one of those people, you don't want to use one of those systems that people are trying to sandbox for new users. Elementary OS comes to mind. So you may not be that person. Maybe you don't want to care or think about it. So you choose something like Zorin or an elementary or one of those choices. I just think that we need to be real about what we're looking for and taking those steps, because if you just go, oh, that looks pretty, all my stuff seems to work at the moment, it's cool. Don't get me wrong, the cool factor is cool. You need to understand that those aren't going to sustain you on your Linux journey. I hope you hear this, all you distro hoppers out there. And I hope you learned something. And I just expressed what I've learned and what I'm continuing to learn. Hope you had a good time. Distro hop on. Have fun. Learn Linux. Fight the man. Do whatever you got to do. I'll see you next time.